Communication improves enormously when people do the method. It isn't until I've been working with people for, 9 years before we started doing these children's workshops. I'd only trained a few children through those years, and now in the last year we've trained a few hundred. It's been a delight to be working with children. It's refreshing. It's great.
They're so compliant and they have such fun, and the positive effect is just so exciting to watch how quickly they heal.
And it's less complicated.
And one of the things that I wanted to ask you about too is talk a little bit about when we train the kids and then the parents start, and what you see happen in families, how the change in a whole family can be.
Yeah, well, I've worked with families who'd all practice together, and that makes all the difference. If mum and dad and the kids are all practicing and they practice together, the whole culture at home changes completely, because people start communicating normally. They're not in the fight-flight mode anymore. They're not feeling threatened that someone else is trying to dominate someone else. When there's a dispute or a disagreement, it's easily manageable. Everyone agrees that they can have their own opinion, but then there needs to be some sort of way of finding a way of solving problems that kind of fits as much as possible everybody. And sometimes it may just have to be that someone becomes a dictator for a short period of time to make sure that everybody's in order or safe or whatever. But generally, people are much more accepting of what needs to happen for the benefit of the whole group or for individuals, depending on the situation. And this is the thing, there aren't any cut and dried solutions. You've got to analyse a situation and work out what to do is for that situation. It's different each time.
You raise a good point, because logical thinking, logical deduction is not as common as it used to be. I've noticed, just working with the public for nearly 40 years, and what you were talking about, the temporary dictatorship, I would call that parenting, which has changed a great deal over the decades. You might touch on that a little bit about parents being able to be decisive and how that changes when parents practice.
The whole style of parenting these days has changed completely. But these days I've noticed more and more as a teacher that kids have had to be subjected to more and more disruption in families, disagreements in families, splitting up of families through work problems, marriage problems, all kinds of disturbances in families, because it causes more breathing. It causes hyperventilation, this kind of destabilization of the family situation. They're being pumped with all sorts of stuff on television, which is totally inappropriate. They're on computer screens for long hours, which is making them hyperventilate. They're not doing so much physical exercise, which physical exercise creates CO2. We're in a world that apparently isn't safe, so you can't walk anywhere. You have to be driven anyway and dropped off and supervised and picked up. So they're not allowed to go out on their own and just be free to play. They've got to be kept regulated because the world's not safe. So that has a big effect on the mind and breathing. Low self-esteem, that's CO2 deficiency. Not being good enough, CO2 deficiency. The fear level with low CO2 goes up incrementally as the CO2 level goes down. So you're constantly battling with fear. It's just a symptom that exists in you if you have low CO2. There's all sorts of factors that are affecting them, and then their opinion is required. So they have the right to decide over and above their parents about what they're going to do and what they're not going to do, and that isn't good for kids.
It's not, and I know that parents mean well and they're loving and want to do what's right for their kids, but isn't it an example of low CO2 when the parent is asking, say, a 4-year-old, do you want to do this? Do you want to and I'm a dentist, and like, do they want to get in the chair? And so, that's one of the big differences that I've seen in family dynamics. Parents they're not able to make decisions and be decisive. They're not able to actually parent. People are stressed at the dentist office anyway, but the behavior is so much these things that you're talking about to such an extreme that it used to not be. And so the stress that you talk about with kids, homes dividing, and the stress that kids are under and worrying about the world, and, stranger danger, and they've got a lot of stress on them that we didn't have when we came along. And so that's why I think it's just so important that we reach the kids, reach the parents, so the parents will get the kids trained so that we can change the life expectancy and improve the longevity of the kids. I'm just excited about more and more kids being able to get trained and get healthier and be able to deal with the stress, and to be able to give kids and adults too this coping mechanism. I think that's the greatest gift that a parent could buy for their child, is to do this training, because it's a lifelong skill.
The children perform better at school, they perform better in sport, they achieve better results in sport, so that obviously makes you feel better. They also don't worry so much if they lose. The fear level is way down. People are much more relaxed at home together. They're able to discuss things more easily. I get parents saying to me, he's talking to me now, or she's talking to me now. The kids will start discussing things with the parents. The stamina to be able to deal with a strong reaction improves. So you're not so bothered about it if someone just blows a gasket. Okay, it's over now, so what can we do to help? Everything goes a lot more easily. I mean, family life is hard enough as it is, but generally people come together more to make life better for everyone. They're much more willing to do that, much happier in themselves, and they play more, spend more time together because they're happier to be together. Certainly that happened in my family over the years. Communication improves enormously when people do the method. One very important point that we haven't touched on is that Buteyko had this view of greed. And his understanding of greed was not being satisfied with the way things are. And I think that's what happens as the control pause goes up, the greed level goes down. And so you become more at ease with the way things are. You haven't got that constant thing in you of being dissatisfied, always finding fault or trying to change things to something different. You're constantly dissatisfied with low CO2. There's this sense that something isn't right all the time. So you'll solve one problem and then you'll go on, there'll be something else that's wrong. There's always something wrong. It doesn't stop. When the CO2 level goes up, you're much more busy sort of observing what's going on and taking in what's actually happening, and then trying to process it and come up with some sort of approach or solution or whatever to what you're going to do. With low CO2, there's this constant sense that things should be different and it shouldn't be the way it is. Constant. And Buteyko called this greed. Constant dissatisfaction.
I see that in the whole arena of life, family life, school life, work life. You see that everywhere.
Yeah, that's the behavior of low CO2. And as the CO2 level goes up, that gradually falls away.